Have you ever wondered why some countries are called rich and others poor? Or why the news keeps talking about the economy like it's some kind of scoreboard? Well, there's actually one number that tries to measure how well a country is doing economically, and it's called GDP. Today, we're going to understand it using pizza, lemonade stands, and your favorite video games, and by the end of this video, you'll understand what is GDP, how does it impact you, how is it calculated, is GDP the whole story? Before we proceed any further, please make sure to hit the subscribe button, and let's dive in. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product, and I know that sounds super boring and complicated, but stick with me because it's actually pretty simple. Think of GDP like this. Imagine your neighborhood is a tiny country, and GDP is the total value of everything your neighborhood makes and sells in 1 year. If your neighbor bakes and sells 100 cakes, that counts toward GDP. If someone fixes cars, that counts. If a kid runs a lemonade stand, yep, that counts too. Even if someone teaches music lessons, that also counts. GDP adds up all of that and says, this is how much stuff our neighborhood produced this year. For a real country, we're talking about everything. Every hamburger sold, every house built, every haircut given, every phone manufactured, and every movie ticket bought. Add it all together and boom, you've got GDP. Here's the simple formula. GDP equals everything a country makes and sells in 1 year. Okay, but why does this matter to you? GDP affects your daily life more than you think. First, employment. When GDP is growing, businesses sell more and need to hire more workers, which means more job opportunities and potentially better wages. When GDP shrinks, businesses lay off employees, and finding work becomes harder. Second, your income. When the economy is doing well and GDP is growing, wages tend to increase and people have more money to spend beyond basic necessities. When the economy struggles, wage growth stagnates and everyone tightens their budgets. Third, public services. Countries with higher GDP can afford better healthcare, education, public transportation, and infrastructure because they have more tax revenue to invest. So GDP isn't just an abstract economic indicator. It's directly connected to whether people can find good jobs, afford a comfortable lifestyle, and have access to quality services. Let me make this clear with a practical example. Imagine a simple coffee supply chain. A coffee farmer grows and sells beans to a roasting company for $500. The roasting company processes and sells roasted coffee to a coffee shop for $1,500. The coffee shop brews and sells cups to customers for $3,000. So what's the GDP of this economy? You might think 500 plus 1,500 plus 3,000 equals $5,000, right? Wrong! The GDP is actually just $3,000. Why? Because GDP only counts the final product that consumers purchase. The raw beans and roasted beans are just intermediate goods, not the final thing customers wanted. The cup of coffee someone drinks, that's the final product. This is important because GDP avoids counting the same value multiple times. Otherwise, those coffee beans would be counted 3 times as they move through production. When you buy a new car for $30,000, GDP counts $30,000, not the cost of steel, plus tires, plus engine plus assembly. Just the final purchase. This is why GDP measures final goods and services only. Now here's where it gets interesting, because not everything counts toward GDP. Things that count include a new car from a dealership, a restaurant meal, a newly constructed house, a medical consultation, a software subscription, and professional services like legal advice. Basically, if it's a new product or service that someone pays for, it counts. But here's what doesn't count. Used goods don't count because they were already counted when originally sold. Financial transfers and gifts don't count because no new product or service was created. It's just money moving between people. Underground economy and illegal activities aren't captured in official statistics. Unpaid household work, like cooking or cleaning at home, doesn't count. But hiring someone to do those tasks does because money is exchanged. And buying stocks or bonds doesn't count because that's just transferring ownership of existing assets, not creating new value. Here's the rule. If something new is produced or a service is performed and money is paid in the official economy, it counts toward GDP. But if it's secondhand, unpaid, or just money changing hands without creating new value, it doesn't count. Now, GDP is useful, but it's not perfect and doesn't tell us everything about how well a society is functioning. Here's what GDP doesn't measure. First, quality of life and well-being. Country A might have higher GDP, but people in Country B might report higher life satisfaction, better work-life balance, and lower stress levels. GDP can't capture human experience. Second, income inequality. A country could have very high GDP, but if wealth is concentrated among a small percentage while the majority struggles financially, that high number doesn't reflect most citizens' economic reality. Third, environmental costs. If companies extract resources, pollute rivers, or emit greenhouse gases and sell products, GDP increases. But we've damaged the environment in ways that will cost future generations. GDP treats environmental destruction as growth. Fourth, many quality of life factors. Public safety, clean air and water, physical and mental health, social connections, and leisure time don't show up in GDP, even though they significantly impact whether people feel their lives are meaningful. And fifth, unpaid work. If someone cares for elderly relatives, volunteers in their community, or maintains their property, that's valuable work. But GDP ignores it because no market transaction occurs. The takeaway: GDP is like a thermometer for economic activity. It tells you how much is being produced and sold, but not if people are healthy, happy, or if growth is sustainable. It's useful for measuring output, but not the only metric for evaluating whether a society is truly successful. You now have better economic literacy than you did a few minutes ago, and that understanding will help you make more informed decisions and better interpret economic discussions around you. If you found this valuable, share it with someone who could benefit. Understanding basic economic concepts is essential for navigating the modern world. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.